There's one phrase that I guarantee if you've been recording music from home for any stretch of time that you've had run through your head as you are moving through the stages of your musical productions. And that phrase is, we'll fix it in the mix. Now, in this video, I want to address the fix it in the mix mentality and show you why you should never, ever think fixing it in the mix is a good idea for your musical productions. Now, this video isn't about saying mixing is unnecessary, because that is far from the truth. Mixing is a very critical component to making sure that your music sounds professional and ready for release. It's one of the stages of recording. But if you have the mentality that the mix can fix whatever mistakes that you are making before you get to the mix, then you're gonna have a sad realization when you get to the mix. All those problems are gonna get amplified, not removed. Now, before we jump into this video, please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment below on your thoughts on Fix It in the Mix, and has it ever worked out for you? Because it hasn't worked out very well for me, but maybe you're one of those people that has a success story. I would love to hear it, because again, with music and art, I mean, there are no absolutes, right? Also, before you get to the mix, you better be sure that you have done a good job editing your tracks. I think editing is one of the least talked about areas of recording, probably because it's one of the most boring, but it's what's gonna be able to get your tracks to a point to where they're ready to be sent off to mix. So if you're looking to know how to mix from A to Z, go in the description below, click on my link to Song Production Pros, and take a look at the resources I have available for you right now on this subject. I trained under a Grammy-nominated producer and worked on some major releases, doing editing and getting everything ready to be sent off to the mixing engineer. And it makes a huge difference. So you may be thinking that you need to get into the mix, but really you might just need some better editing skills. Well, who knows, but click that link, check it out. So with this fixing the mix mentality, there's 5 things that I wanna tackle today to kind of just expose it. We all experience it. We'll all fall into this trap. I know that I do, so I don't want you to do the same thing, or at least if you are in this trap, you know you're in it, so you can get yourself out of it, move forward, and make some awesome music. So the first thing you got to know is that a bad recording cannot be fixed in the mix. You can't just take a bad recording and say, whatever, the mixer can make it sound good. Now, that isn't to say that you need to have the most flawless recording. You can have a good recording. You know, if you have a decent interface, a decent microphone, you can produce a good recording as long as you have enough headroom, you're not clipping, and you have a pretty solid performance. So I'm not saying you need to have a perfect performance. It just can't be a really crummy sounding and bad performance. If it's way off time, if you have a lot of room noise, maybe you're recording and it's clipping, or you don't have enough level, all these things can be just technical issues that make it a lot more difficult once you get to the mix stage. If you're too quiet, when you start to compress and bring it up, you're bringing up all of that noise floor. So you're gonna introduce a lot of noise into the signal. If you're way too loud, then you're just gonna be clipping, and that has its own challenges. So you just gotta make sure before getting into your mix stage that you're just getting all of your recordings to sound good on their own. Now, bad recording can also mean bad arranging. If you have an arrangement that is all over the place, things aren't fitting together, a mixer is not going to be able to fix that. It's not going to be something that relies on them to make all the pieces fit together. Yes, they can go and carve out space to make sure that things breathe more, that things are a little more audible, that there's more sheen, more gloss on the overall recording, but they're not going to be able to take a really crazy arrangement where nothing fits together and make it work, make it groove, make it feel, and turn into a song that anybody wants to listen to. So you need to really think about your recordings and your arrangement before moving into your mix. Number 2 thing I want to touch on is, again, I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, editing is more important, to me at least, than mixing. If you can get things right in your edit, then it's going to make the mixer's job, or if you're mixing, your job a whole lot easier. It's going to be to where the mixer is enhancing what they have instead of trying, again, to fix things in the mix. And so when I talk about editing, I mean making sure that you have your takes come together, you have everything timed if it needs timing, your vocals are tuned, that you have pockets where things can breathe and live without feeling like you need to reach for an EQ or compressor, making sure that when you hit play, and it moves all the way through the track, you can listen to it and feel the energy. You can feel the movement. You can feel the song, even though it's not mixed yet. When you go through every single track, listening for resonances that you might be able to remove, maybe even adding some of your own processing to some of the tracks to get it to sound more like you want it to sound like in your head. There's nothing wrong with doing maybe a little EQ touch up, say on some vocals, to get the vocals to kind of sit more the way that you imagine hearing them before sending to the mixer. So that way the mixer gets something that is more in line with your vision, and then they're going to be more in line to giving you something back that you like. So think about that, where you want to go through every single track, and this is very tedious work. I'm not going to say this is fun, but you're going to want to go through every single track and listen to it in solo and make sure there's no pops, no clicks, no weird sounds, any weird resonances. This happens a lot with drums. If you're like listening to a snare, you might be getting some weird resonances in the snare, some other toms and stuff ringing during hits. These are all things that, yes, a mixer can fix, but I really think it's the editor's job to smooth all those things out, some of the major problems in the recording before it ever gets to the mix. The third thing that I'm bringing up, this falls underneath arrangement, is that good producers focus on the blueprint, on pre-production. They are going to map things out before they even get into recording, editing, all those things. Now, if you are a home music producer, you may be kind of blurring the lines between pre-production, sketching, writing, and recording, and even mixing to some extent. But really, if you are trying to work with other musicians, you're really trying to keep the focus and your vision intact for the song itself, or even to see if a song is worth pursuing. When you're demoing your song, you're going to want to start sketching out some of the elements, some of the arrangement of the music. It doesn't have to be exact to what is going to be performed, but you're going to want to get the general vibe and groove of the song. So that way, when you get into the recording phase, you're getting some great performances out of musicians you're working with, or when you actually go to fill in the actual performances, you have the baseline for what it is you're trying to achieve. So professional producers focus a lot on pre-production, the planning, the blueprint, and you should as well. By focusing on that blueprint, you're going to be able to get into every stage of the recording process without the idea of, well, we can just push this to the next stage and we'll figure it out then. We'll fix it in the mix. You won't have that problem. You're going to know what you are going for when you're recording, when you're layering, when you are doing your arrangement. And then once you're there, then you can start doing your editing and making things sound the way it should sound, just as a raw take, and that everything fits together based off the blueprint that you've already created. Now, here is another hard pill to swallow, is that a mix engineer is not going to be able to save a weak performance. A performance that is void of feeling, emotion, vibe. Yes, a mixing engineer can do some different techniques to bring out and enhance what they're given, but if the feeling itself is not there to begin with, it's very, very challenging for someone to go in and infuse that feeling. So this is something to keep in mind, that when you are working with the track, if something feels off as you're working on it, then something's probably off. You need to go and figure out what that is and work on it. Whether it's maybe the vocals just don't feel like they're energetic enough. Maybe there's big timing issues to where it's not going to be where you actually want to try to mangle it into time or tune. You may need to do a re-recording. Maybe the guitar tones are just a little weak. They're not quite there. You may need to re-record those guitars. This is where if it's not feeling right after recording, then it's not right. You need to get the feeling and the vibe right before you think, oh, let's fix it in the mix. We can throw some compression on it, EQ it, whatever, and we'll make it sound better then. It's not the way it works. You need to make sure, especially for the main instruments and performances like a vocal, drums, bass, you want to make sure that those are locked in, and then the mix is there to enhance it, not to fix anything. Last thing I want to touch on is that a feeling, an emotion, and that connection with the listener will be more important than any recording trickery, mixing, mastering, and that's just the truth. If you can figure out the core of your song and you have an emotion behind it and you're able to bring that out in your performance, regardless of how good your microphone is, your interface is, your room is, you will have a good song that will connect with listeners. But that's where talent comes into play. You need to have talent first, and then you use all the tools to enhance that talent, to be able to communicate your talent through the medium of song, through speakers. That's what we're trying to do here. For example, Bon Iver wrote his album for Emma forever ago in a cabin with minimal equipment. He thought that those were just demos. When he came out of the cabin, he realized he had a record. If you listen to that record, I don't think anybody would say that it's the best sounding record, but it's got so much feeling, so much heart that it just connects you to that music. Think about the expansion of lo-fi music. People are connecting with the imperfections of things like lo-fi because it creates emotion within us. It can spark memories or create nostalgia. So lean into those things when you're making your records. Don't always think that you need to have the most immaculate mix or you need to fix certain things for the mix. Make sure, again, that you have the feeling infused into your song, even if it's not perfect, because feeling is going to trump perfection. You could have the most technically perfect recording, but if it's devoid of any feeling, any emotion, nobody's going to care. Nobody cares. They just want to listen to a song that makes them feel something that they can connect with. If you keep that in the forefront of your mind throughout the entire recording process, you're going to have much better results. So you're going to have to really be scrutinous on each stage and never think, oh, we'll just push this into the next stage and we'll fix it then. You need to be aware of every stage of the process, whether it's pre-production, recording, editing, mixing, mastering. Know what stage you're in and only move into that stage when it's appropriate for the song to move into that stage. So never just think you can fix it in the mix. If you're thinking fix in the mix, or if you're in the middle of a song or starting a song and thinking ever that phrase fix in the mix, you are being led astray. You need to stop and think, what does the song need right now that doesn't require EQ, doesn't require compression, doesn't require any of these things that a mixing engineer would use to make your tracks fit together? What does it need? If it's not feeling right at that moment, then you have some problems you need to address and fix it, and then move forward into your mix. Let me know in the comments below which part of this was eye-opening for you. I appreciate you watching this. Again, my name is Brad Johnson of Song Production Pros, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.